Uh, Hello, I'm Rajeev. I'm an assistant professor and PhD research scholar from the Department of Planning, School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, under the Ministry of Education, Government of India. And I have co-authored this paper with Dr. Adinarayanane Ramamurthy, who is the Dean Planning and Development and Associate Professor, Department of Planning, School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, under the Ministry of Government of India. And we have titled this paper, our research as Assessing the Shoreline Dynamics, Integrating Sea Level Data and Geospatial Technology Lessons from Kerala State, India. I thank this opportunity for giving us this opportunity to present our paper in the 18th International Conference on Sustainable Development 2023. Without further ado, I'll just introduce my presentation structure. So first I'll be discussing on climate change and coast, and then I'll be giving a brief on the coastal regulations with specific focus on global and Indian scenario, then taking through the contextual setting of the Kerala shoreline, which will be introduced from the perspective of coastal vulnerability and risk, and then taking further focused discussion on the changing of coast in Cochin, the hotspot area for discussion, wherein the sea level rise scenario building shall be carried out and shoreline change assessment will be done. Further, based on this, we are trying to summarize what all challenges in general from the Indian scenario is there in the coastal planning process, and then moving ahead with the conclusions and way forward, closing the presentation. When we try to understand climate change and coast, we can see that climate change and subsequent sea level changes along the coastal areas is of utmost importance to researchers and policymakers because of its possible impact on the human habitations along these coastal areas, which are having more than 50% of the global population residing. Studies indicate that a likely increase in the sea level rise in the range of almost 0.3 meters to 1.2 meters by 2100, and a few even higher. So the impact of sea level rise is not just limited to sea coast as estimated by IPCC. It is also there in the estuaries, the backwater areas, and the land adjoining are also equally more vulnerable. This scenario is of great concern to Kerala, which has a coastline of approximately 590 kilometers, a state in Kerala, the state in India, and a large expanse of backwaters and estuaries with extensive low-lying areas such as filtration ponds being present. The impacts of sea level rise along the Indian coast also, we can see that it gives a value of, estimates give a value of 1 to 1.14 millimeters per year for the specific case area of Cochin, which we have identified through our research as the hotspot area for further analysis. The methodology adopted for this study, in this we have tried to conceptualize the sea level rise and related impacts and generated the spatial interaction model for composite coastal vulnerability and coastal risk associated with sea level rise under the coastal regulation zone. The quantitative coastal vulnerability index, the factors indicating composite coastal vulnerability, is based on quantitative estimates to characterize the physical setting, including geomorphology, mean elevation, shoreline change, bathymetry, the relative sea level change, significant wave height, mean spring tide range, and all this coupled with predominant land use along the coast and the coastal population. Further, after carrying out the coastal vulnerability index and identifying the risk, a linear regression model was drawn along with sea level and shoreline change data to understand the impact of sea level. Additionally, through hotspot analysis, areas of high concern have been identified and coastal development in these coastal stretches have been studied to understand the adherence to the CRSJP regulations and this violations. For this study in particular, secondary data has been used to construct and analyze regional level, that is Kerala state specific details. Further, primary survey was also undertaken in the specific hotspot area of Cochin, which includes interviews with stakeholders and expert opinions were undertaken. So the importance of coastal zone and the protection of its resources has been recognized by almost nations across the world. This multi-user environment, that is the coastal systems, has naturally attracted conflicts in different forms, and it is essential that we designate specific areas in this multi-user environment as areas for preservation, conservation, and utilization, according to their varying ecological sensitivities. Given India's densely populated 7,500-kilometer coastline, ensuring coastal stability becomes crucial. Like in several coastal countries, many coastal zones in India have fragile ecosystems, and these continue to degrade through loss of habitat, species diversity, water pollution, the eutrophication, and landscape deterioration. So, thus, owing to this threat faced by the beaches of India, the government of India issued in 1991 under the EPA Act, that's the Environment Protection Act of India 1986, the Coastal Regulation Zone notification in 1991, which was further amended in the year 2011 as Coastal Regulation Zone notification 2011 and further amended in 2020. So between 1991 and 2009, before the 2011 notification, there were more than 25 amendments. And they were trouble putting the provisions into practice. So eventually this was allowed to lapse, and then the ministry brought out the CRZ regulation 2011. So that's the history of the CRZ regulation in India in brief. So in addition to the CRZ regulation of 2011 and the recent one of 2020, India has also implemented a number of voluntary measures with its own fund in support of sustainable development strategy, which includes COMAP, the land-ocean interactions in the coastal zone, the SICOM, etc. So based on all this, we have tried to take proactive steps in protecting the coast. Nonetheless, the coast is not homogeneous and it is heterogeneous, and that is leading to concerns with respect to sea level rise. In India, we have taken a setback zone of 500 meters from the high tide line as the CRZ. Now, across countries, it keeps on varying depending on the regulations, so which has been compiled in the MSS report of 2005 and presented in the table. Coming to the coastal, the setting, the contextual setting of Kerala, the Kerala coast. So Kerala is the southern state in India, and it is a coastal state, and this is the state. So the Kerala coast of has approximately 590 kilometers and over 2 lakh hectares of brackish water bodies extending from Manjeshwaram in north to Porur in south. So the urbanization in the state of Kerala is concentrated, but also equally dispersed. It's quite clear from the gross population density map and the urban areas map of 2011. Based on the data that was available, we have generated these maps. The Kerala coast is faced with the unique high density population loss, and there is, coupled with that is the loss of land due to coastal erosion, the mining of beach sand for industrial purposes, the drastic morphological and the shoreline changes due to construction of shoreline structures like harbor breakwaters, destruction and reclamation of the wetlands, including mangrove, saline intrusion in the water table, in decreasing fish catch, etc. All this make the coast in particular very unique in Kerala. And the characteristic feature of this coast is the high population density of approximately 2,362 persons per square kilometers. And all the three major urban centers of Trivandrum, Cochin, and Calicut is coastal. And the hotspot area which we have identified for further studies is also Cochin, which is the commercial capital of Kerala. So coming to the coastal morphology, so Kerala coast has almost 590 kilometers of brackish water bodies that make up the Kerala's coastline stretch from Manjeshwaram in the north to Porur in the south. So Chittari, Kapad, Ponnani, Calicut, Cochin, Alapi, and Kovalam all have developed sandy beaches. So these are few images of the Kerala coast. And the coast covers approximately 113 inland fishing villages and 221 coastal fishing villages. Then we have other coastal morphological features like barrier beaches, spits, estuaries, backwater islands, headlands, and cliffs. Tidal inlets, we have rocky coast, then backwater islands. All these are the different coastal morphological features that we can come across from the north to south of Kerala. So the morphological hotspots we have seen from their vulnerability to sea level rise, and this has been determined based on the varying levels of resistance that these morphological feature offer resistance to sea level rise. The highest vulnerability has been shown by the backwater islands and the adjoining filtration ponds. Further by the mudflats and tidal inflets, the barrier beaches and spits, then sandy beaches, coastal cliffs and headlands. So this is primarily this study or assessment has been done based on understanding case examples across the world, how these various morphological features offer resistance to sea level rise. So the lowest vulnerability is to coastal cliffs and headlands. However, that is having a very small short length in Kerala alone. So major of the hotspots of sea level rise, that is backwater islands and adjoining filtration ponds, are spread all across India, specifically in the hotspot area of Cochin. So also the Kerala coastline, we have tried to map the shoreline change along the coastline, and we can see a high level of erosion along the coastline, specifically in the southern portion of Kerala. And on top of that, coupling that with that, we have already introduced that it is a highly urbanized coastal stretch, which we have captured through a map, wherein we have listed the ports, the fish landing centers, the tourist areas, the areas affected by erosion also. So we can see that how the interplay of these factors are. And then, yes, we have the major urban centers which are also mapped. So coming to the composite vulnerability and coastal risk to sea level rise, we have taken the parameters of geomorphology, shoreline change, bathymetry, mean spring tide range, the significant wave height, the presence of ports, harbors, fish landing centers, and that leading to accretion or erosion, coastal population, and specific vulnerable areas like ecologically sensitive areas, elevation from the mean sea level, etc., as parameters. And again, using GIS, we have tried to map the coast after doing the coastal vulnerability index. So from this, we can understand that when we see the composite vulnerability index, the entire coast is not uniform. It is not having a homogeneous character, and the vulnerability is also varying. However, when we see the CRSJP notification of 2011 or 2020, it is almost a blanket strategy that we follow. So, which is not the ideal scenario, and which is indicating that specific sediment cell level detailed study has to be undertaken. So the focus area for further discussion was identified as Cochin, which is an urban agglomeration in the middle part of Kerala, which is spread across an area of 732 square kilometers. So the Cochin coast is highly urbanized and equally highly diverse with respect to biodiversity and ecological sensitivity. So based on literature review, we have tried to compile the following values, and we can understand that the highest increase in sea level rise is 98 centimeters by 2050 as predicted by IPCC in their sixth report, and 133.7 centimeters by 2100 given by Ministry of Earth Sciences, the highest figures. A study by National Institute of Oceanography estimates that 1 meter sea level rise would inundate about 3% of the Cochin metropolitan area, affecting more than 50,000 people. And similarly, that areas would be inundated can be also identified as a tool for identifying the potential consequences of sea level rise, for adapting to the impacts of climate change and building resilience in vulnerable coastal communities by the policymakers. So the question course was taken up for detailed assessment of this. So first, a linear regression study was carried out, where we were trying to ascertain the sea level rise with respect to the shoreline change. Uh, and then further, the DSAS was utilized. This is the methodology which we have undertaken for carrying out the digital shoreline assessment system. So this extension tool did provide a robust suite of regression rates in consistent and simply repeatable method to execute on large volumes of data collection at various scales. And this is the output that we have generated using the methodology for the coast of Cochin. So from the analysis, the following calculations were developed: the net shore movement, the distance between the oldest and the youngest shoreline for each transect, the endpoint rate was arrived at, and the linear regression rate. This statistic can be determined by fitting the least square regression line to all the shoreline points. So this was done. Uh, Coming to the conclusion, so yes, this study did reveal that the sea level rise and climate change is a looming threat. However, there is challenges that still exist in the coastal planning process, like the uncertainty and the long-term planning difficulty when it comes to sea level rise and climate change, the increased pressure on resources and rapid and uncontrolled expansion which is happening along the coastal areas, the dynamic environment and the dynamic change in the shoreline, because the shore is a continuously modifying environment. The regulatory compliance, yes, there is a lack of enforcement, conflict of interest in the stakeholders, and political influence comes into play as a challenge. When it comes to infrastructure development, it is vulnerability and accessibility to the critical infrastructure and higher cost of infrastructure implementation has become a challenge in Indian context. Ecological conservation, community engagement and stakeholder coordination, data and information gaps, policy and governance issues, resilience building, etc., are other challenges in the coastal planning process. To conclude, firstly, the coastal plans preparation need to be detailed and completed at the lowest unit level of implementation. That was one of the first output of the study. These coastal plans further need to be streamlined into the respective spatial development plans and enforcement mechanisms for coastal development regulations. And these regulations need to be clearly defined and shared with the respective local self-governments as well. Across the states of India in the coastal region, we have tried to ascertain how much level of this integration has been carried out of the coastal plans ingrained into the spatial development plans or the master plans and the regional plans, which still can be further enhanced. Secondly, as a way forward, under prevailing development conditions along the coast of India, carrying capacity can be one such tool, which when operationalized, the coastal development process can help in strategizing for optimal use of the coastal resources. This came out through the specific study in Cochin and the pressure that was generated in Cochin because of sea level rise and the coastal development that was happening. Thirdly, all this entails setting up of a task force under the nodal Department of Planning and Convergence, which should include experts in various fields, public representatives for effective plan preparation, and also specific cells at the local level with state officials, coastal communities, and NGOs for enforcement and monitoring the coast. So this was done, or this output was generated through this research based studying the CRSJP regulations and its implementation. The way forward is to bring about climate resilient sustainable development of the coast through careful planning and supporting legislation by strategizing according to the changing development needs, understanding the development capacity of the coastal region, and protecting the natural resources in a balanced manner. So these were the references which few of the key references that we have referred for building the study. Thank you very much for your time. And once again, I'm Rajeev, and I'm the corresponding author. I'm an assistant professor and PhD research scholar at Department of Planning, School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, under Ministry of Education, Government of India. Thank you very much.